guys, and welcome to a simple and quick review. I'm Eva, and this one is about The Kennedy Debutante by Carrie Maher. And I liked this book. You discover all of the Kennedys in this book, not all of them, but you hear a lot about the older Kennedys. So you mostly hear about Kik. The story is about Kik Kennedy, so it is about her debutante season starting in 1938, and it goes up, I think, to about 1944. From the synopsis on the back, I thought it was just about 1938 and her debutante season, and her dad being in London at the time, being the ambassador. And that's kind of what I thought about the story before going into it. But I've read Kennedy's stories before. I always found them intriguing. I knew Kik's had a sad ending, that she had a short life like some people in her family have had. And so I was intrigued by it to see what happened in her debutante season. And then as well, you do hear, I think you hear from Jack, just, I don't know, I think the author adds it in a little bit more, just because he's the most famous of them. And then Joe's character, you hear a lot from her oldest brother Joe, which makes sense because he was in London at the time. She was in London during the war. And then you do often hear about Joe and Rose, her parents, which makes a lot of sense because they're in her big decision. And then also you hear about her eldest sister, Rosemary, which is a really sad story as well. And I'd like to read some more stuff about Rosemary. But there are 9 kids in the Kennedy family, and they come one summer for the eldest, the husband. The father, Joe Kennedy, is wanting to run for president someday, and he's made some deal with FDR, and he is at the time the ambassador to London. But as we know in history, his ambassadorship does not go well, and we enter a little war called World War II. And then another ambassador comes in. So then Joe sets his sights on his eldest son, Joe, to be president. And then Joe goes off to war, obviously, and Jack goes off to war. And Jack gets kind of like a hero story in the middle of it. But this whole story is about Kik Kennedy and her debutante season. So she comes out as a debutante in 1938 in London. She meets a lot of characters in London, a lot of high society. And at the same time, she does a lot of volunteering. I was surprised in this book how much religion played into her life. I don't know if it's true and authentic, but I know the author did a ton of research into her life. And so that was a huge problem in this book, is she falls for the Duke of Devonshire's son. So I'm not sure what his name is, but yeah, he's going to be the eventual Duke, which is a big problem because they are Protestant. And as we know, the Kennedys are Catholic, and staunchly Catholic at the time, and they don't want to marry outside the Catholic Church, because if you do, or if you give it up, you will, if you don't get married inside the Catholic Church, you will be excommunicated as well. So you can't marry outside the church, basically. You can't marry a Protestant, is a big problem. But that's who she falls for. So at first, she falls for him, and then Joe, her father's ambassadorship, doesn't go well, as we know. They end up going home because the war is starting. It's safer for them, it's safer for their family, but she just wants to get back there. She wants to see him, she wants to be with him, so she kind of lies to the Red Cross a little bit to get herself over there, because you can't be going over there for a boy. So you have to, a lot of women did it, but you have to lie and say you're not going over there for boys. So she gets herself over the ocean against her parents' approval. Before that, she does live in DC and live on her own for the first time in life, so she learns a lot about herself. She runs into Jack a lot in DC. But you see the special relation between Jack and Joe and Rosemary, the eldest siblings, and Rosemary's story takes a really sad turn. So this book takes a lot of sad turns in it. Towards the end, it's kind of a sad story after sad story after sad story. Rosemary's story is sad, and Joe's story is sad, of course. And then her future husband's story is sad as well. So she does get herself over there. She does get herself engaged to the guy who will be Duke. And she does end up marrying him, become the Marquess. Which I think you can know from one quick Google that she was the Marchess of Devonshire. You can find out that she was the Marchess for 1 month. I'm not going to go on and on because this is a newer release and I don't want to give everything away, but it is really, really, really sad. It was interesting. I'm glad I read it. It was kind of fun to hear from somebody else's point of view outside of Jack's point of view, or Jacqueline Kennedy's, or the ones I've read before, or the older Joe and Rose, the mom and dad. So it was interesting to hear from Kix. Kix has a very short lifespan, just to give you that. But this story does cut off in 1944, and she does live, I think, till 1948. But I thought the story gave it justice. I was really surprised about how much religion played into it and how serious she took everything. And the thing I would say about this book is the debutante season and her meeting all these characters, they weren't necessarily needed for the story. And the debutante season was quite long in the beginning of the book. And I know that was the title of the book, but that was honestly the most boring part of the book. Her being in Washington, D.C., her going to the Red Cross and going to England and being in the war, her working things out with the future Duke. Those were all things that were far more interesting and far more like carried the story. I kind of got bored in the beginning with the debutante season, and it is a huge portion of the book. And that's just going to parties and going to bars and her doing volunteer work at this church and creating a really great friendship with Father O'Henry or something like that, Flannery, who ends up being a false character. He is a fictitious character put in the story. But those are all my thoughts on it, and I hope you guys like this simple and quick review. I would definitely recommend it to those who like historical fiction, historical romance fiction, and those who like to read about the Kennedys. And I think you'll really like it. I think it was really done well and researched well. And I will see you guys in the next one. See you guys next time. Bye!